Algebra lesson on creating systems of linear equations, lesson 12.1, and that is in Unit 5, Linear Systems of Equation. Let's get started, guys. So here it is, creating linear systems of models. So let's look at this question. After leaving her hotel, a student is walking to a cafe to breakfast and do some sightseeing. On the way, she passes two stores that she rents a bicycle. So the two scenarios that we're working from here, right? The first shop charges initial fee of $7.50 and $1.50 for each hour. And as we've done this many times before, um, the first shop charges initial fee, and that's the y-intercept, isn't it? And $1.50 per hour, and that is um the slope. So I think what we can say is y is equal to 1.5 x plus 7, right? And then what do we have for the second one? The second shop charges a flat fee of $3 per hour. So there's no initial cost, right? So it's more expensive, but there's no initial cost. So that we could say y is equal to 3 times x. So clearly from the context, we could see that we're going to let x equal to the number of hours that we rent, and the y is going to be the cost of renting, right? Yeah. So given that scenarios, right, we came up with two equations, right? Um, when I was a student, my teachers used to make us put y sub 1, y sub 2. Technically, that's wrong because it's not a coordinate. It is a variable, right? We do have an option of calling it f of x versus g of x, but that's more of a function. So for now, we'll just leave it as it is, right? So how should we start, right? Well, what we're looking for is we need to decide, the student needs to decide which rental agent to use. And the underlying concept over here is that we do not want to spend more money than we have to, right? So we're looking for something cheaper. But when something is cheaper or more expensive, we have to know where the cost is the same, right? Right. To answer these questions, guys, how should we start? The first thing we should do is find equation for cost of renting, right? So write down find the cost of renting for both stores. Okay. And now the question is asking, when will the rental be cost the same? What is the cost of the rental, right? So what we do is we need to set the equation equal to itself. It appears that I probably should have given part B more space. So just be aware of that, okay? So part number one is when is y equal, right? The rental cost is y. When two y's are equal to each other, let's do one y on the left-hand side right here. I'm going to put that on the left-hand side is 1.5x plus 7, and the other y, it's 3x. You set it equal to each other and solve it that way, guys, right? Subtracting 1.5 from both sides, it's equal to this. And then there are a couple of ways to do this. What we can do is, instead of doing it this way, uh, instead of the 5 over 2, we could write that as 3 over 2x, right? Working with a fraction is actually a lot easier, right? So we multiply both sides by 2/3, like this, right? You know, actually, I don't like that color. It doesn't show up as much. So let me change that color to, let's go with magenta. Multiply 2/3 to both sides, right? And the good thing about the reciprocal is that it becomes 1. So the right-hand side is x, and the left-hand side is 14 over 3, right? Let me switch I like to put the variables on the left-hand side. So that is equal to 14 over 3. Or 3 goes in there how many times? 4 times, right? It's 4 2/3 hours, right? I'll just leave it there for now, okay? And the part 2 of this is, what is the cost of the rental? What we can do is plug that x into either one of the equations and figure it out that way, right? So what we can do is just plug into the easiest one possible. And to me, it's the second equation, y equal to 3x. And what is my x equal to? 14/3. The improper fraction, a common fraction, would be easier because it will just cancel nicely. And there you go. And that's a good reason for us to use fractions, right? And then we could state the answer. We could say that both stores will charge $14 for rental that lasts 4 hours and 2/3. That's equal to 4 hours and 40 minutes, but that's good enough, right? So if she wants to rent a bike for 8 hours, which shop should she use? Clearly, it's the one that charges less per hour because slope goes like this. So over a long period of time, it stays low, right? So if you look at this visually, what you will find is that given these two equations, the first one starts high, but more like this. The second one starts at 0, but goes up higher. So it turns out that is 4 2/3 hour here, guys, right? Do you see that? Okay. What we can do is call this y of f and y of s, the y value of the first store versus the second store. Okay. And what we could have done, and apologize for that one, is y of f equal to y of s. Could you just add that in, please? All right. I'm gonna write that in magenta. Yeah. Make sure you add that in, please. Okay. Yeah. I mean, clearly by doing this, we know that the first store would be a lot lower, right? But if you know that, it'd be great, but you don't have to, right? We could just plug in the value. So for 8 hours, the first store, y of f, right, is equal to $1.50 times 8 plus 7. The $1.50 times 8 is $12 plus 7, that is $19. Y of s is just 3 times the 8, which is $24. And you could clearly see that the first store is cheaper, right? So predictably, we need to say that what? The first store is cheaper after 4 2/3 hours. Therefore, she should choose the first store. If you don't like writing as much, then just write down the second part right here. Should be sufficient. But it's a good practice to write it in full sentence. It helps you clear your mind and to really see what's going on. Okay. Now, let's examine this question right here, guys. Now, how often do we do the words problems in textbook or in real life comes in a bullet point, right? So the next practice that we're gonna do, right, has a problem right here, just written like a regular word problem. But we have to read the question very carefully. Okay. All right, it's the same direction, guys. Right. We're going to determine the cost of 2 services first, the step number 1, like we did earlier, right? And then we're going to determine what the price will be. Okay. A couple of things. But before we do that, we need to do the step number 1, which is to find the equation. Let's read the question, guys. The video streaming service called Atomic Stream charges $10 per stream for membership and $1 per movie. Interesting. Okay. So the very Atomic Stream, let's call that the first one. So $10 for membership, that's a B, and that's a slope M, isn't it? Right, because that's the rate. So therefore, the atomic streams, let's go with A on this one, because next one is B, right? So the Y of A is 1x plus 10. For the purpose of this class, you don't have to have let statement. We're just going to assume that the x is the number of movies in this case, and the y will be the cost, okay? And then for the second one, the Blitz videos charges $15 for the membership, but 50 cents for the download. So y of b, therefore, is, that's right, the rate is 0.5x plus 15. Just like before, it costs more. Could you put S1 over there? So what's happening is that one store charges $10. If it's $1 like this, the next one is higher, but it's a little flatter. See that? So this is A and the B. So B is more expensive initially. At some point, the price is the same, and the B will be cheaper once we go past that point. But the question is asking, when are they the same amount? So they want to know this, and I want to know the price. Okay, so that's visually what's happening. Let's go to step number 2. Ready, guys? Okay, so we're gonna have to set them equal to each other. So we'll say y of A equal to y of B. And what is y of A equal to? 1x plus 10 is equal to y of B is 0.5x plus 15. Let's solve for that, shall we? So we subtract 0.5 from both sides, which will yield 0.5x on the left-hand side. Okay, so now that that's taken care of, we need to move the 10 to the other side, which means that 15 minus 10 gives you 5. Okay, once again, you should really think of this in terms of like half x, right? Then once we do that, we multiply 2 to both sides. This is what you should be thinking, right? There was no need for you to copy it exactly. Just think about that, okay? So you could just multiply 2 to the left and the right, right? And that would yielded an x is equal to 10. So the cost will be the same with the 10 downloads. That's what that means, right? So this implication over here is that the cost is equal with 10 downloads. You got that? Great. And we already know that the B will be cheaper beyond that point, right? All right. But that's not what question is asking at this point, right? So now the question is, what is the cost? Okay, step number 3. Step number 3 answers the part 2. Do you see that, guys? Part 2. Will the process be the same? And S of 3 is, we just want to check what is y of A. That is 1 times the 10 downloads plus 10 initial charge gives $20. Let's just double check, shall we? It's not a bad idea to do this. So that is a half times 10 downloads plus 15. That's 5 plus 15, which is $20. Check. All right. So therefore, we could say, conclude, 10 downloads will cost $20 for both services. Okie dokie. All right, guys. what I'm going to ask you to do now is work on the your turn. Hold on. Is that right? Yes, it is. All right, guys, here's your turn, 3 and 4. Make sure you pause the video, please. Okay. I'm going to assume that you worked on it. You should spend about 5 minutes on it just now, right? So here are the answers. And we'll go over this in class, right? When I have a chance to talk with you guys. All right, let's move on to the next set of questions right here. In this case, it's slightly different, right? In that we're going to use the table, right? So we're going to be creating a linear systems using the systems of equations. Okay. All right. For the purposes of, yeah, let me zoom it in here, guys. Okay. The garden supply company delivers as much, delivers mulch according to the following table. If you notice, this is increasing by 1, right? And then in the yard depot, they're increasing by $30. That implies the slope over here is 30. Okay. In the second one, it's increasing by how much? It's a consistent amount, isn't it? It's plus 25. So every mulch increasing cubic yard gives you what? $25. Okay. Step number 1, we're going to create equation for both of them. So yard depot, okay, guys, right? On the left-hand side, yard depot works like, okay, we have 1 comma 60 comma, and what we could do is 2 comma 90. And we already have the slope, guys, which is change in y over change in x. That's 90 minus 60 over 2 minus 1, which is 30, right? But I don't think this particular step is necessary because we could do it this way. But sometimes the numbers here are not very nice. So this is a good thing to do. The second thing is that we have a slope and we have a point. Do you know what to do now, right now, guys? That's right. We could use a point slope formula, right? Which is y minus y1 equal to m times x minus x1. So the y1, let's try to use this one right here, guys, okay? When we do that, that's y minus 60 is equal to 30 times x minus 1. And I like to have it in terms of slope-intercept form. So that would be equal to y is equal to, hold on, that's 30x minus 30. On the left-hand side, it is what? 60. So we're going to move this to the other side, and that yields y is equal to 30x. You add 60 to both sides, that'll give me plus 30. Okay, we good? All right, guys. So now this is asking us to find the linear equation for the lawn garden. Okay, and lawn garden is very similar in that we got 1 in 80. Remember, for 1 cubic yard, it's $80. And we could use anything you like. If you want to use 4 and 155, it's not really necessary. So I just decided to use the easiest number possible. That's 2 comma 105. And we're going to go through the motion here of doing this. The slope is changing y and changing x. And that'll be y is 105 minus 80. And the x is 2 minus 1. When you go through the calculation, the top is 25, the bottom is 1. So therefore it is 25 as we expected it to be. So now what do I do? Okay. Wow, I just realized we don't have much of a space here, right? I'm so sorry about that. Okay. All right. So what we're gonna do is y minus y1 equal to m times x minus x1, and we need to choose the smallest number for because it's easier. So let's use this number as the first one as well. So y minus y1 is 80, m is 25, and the x1 is 1. We distribute on the right-hand side, 25x minus 25, that's 80. Add 80 to both sides, that's 25x. What is 80 minus 25? That should give you 55. There you go. All right. So those two are the right answers. Oh, geez. I actually don't have enough space here. All right. Let me try to squeeze it in here a little bit. I think we could do it, right? Here we go. We know that the two y's are supposed to equal to each other, right? So we set it equal to each other. I'm going to put this in green just so that you could sort of get not confused. So the two y's are equal to each other, which yields 30x plus 30 is equal to 25x plus 55. Let me push that a little bit to the left-hand side. Okay. Let me push that a little bit to the left-hand side. There you go. Okay. The fact that it's green means that it's a second phase, right? That'll be the step number 2. Okay. So we solve for 20. Let's move the 25x to the side, which yields what, guys? 5x. And let's move the 30 to the side. We end up with, that's right, 25, isn't it? Yeah. And divide 5 to both sides. X is 5. And step number 3, we're going to plug that into one of the equations. We're going to put it to both. Y of 5, let's put like into the left-hand side, is 30 times 5 plus 30. 30 times 5 is 150, plus 30 is 180. And y of 5 to the other equation, 25 times 5. What's 25 times 5? That's 125, right? Plus 55, that's 180. Okay, the cost is the same. Therefore, right, it costs $80 for 5 cubic yards for both. And that is it. Okay. We were able to plug it in. So there you go. Right. All right, guys. Okay, guys. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave part B as a extra practice for you guys. But let me give you the answer key for that one. For them to be both the same price, it's gonna be 4 hours, and they will cost $20 for both places. Okay. And if you have a question on it, make sure you come see me during tutorial, and I'll show you the step-by-step answers. Okie dokie. All right. All right, guys. It's time for you to practice. Why don't you guys go ahead and do the examples 5 and 6. Please pause the video. Okay. You should have worked on each problem for about 3 to 4 minutes, I guess. A total of maybe 6 to 8 minutes, 6 to 10 minutes, I guess, right? Depending how fast you are. And here are the answer keys. Right here. See? Let me make it a little bit smaller. That fits nicely. Okay. And you could see that generally the steps are pretty much the same. As I mentioned before, they're using y over here, but they decide to use f of x, g of x, right? Following. And then you could assign which is the f, which is the g. You could do what I did. which is put a subscript in the y. So here, instead of just y, just call it y of y or y of l. Well, that's not very attractive. So yeah, we'll talk more about this in person. Okie dokie, guys. All right, last but not least, right? There's a third way. The third way is that we have a graph, right? And we're going to figure out the linear equation by looking at the graph. And how are we going to do that? Okay. As I mentioned before, one is higher than the other, right? So in this example, we're going to make we use the graph to make a linear model and describe the meaning in this case, right? Clearly, one is lower than the other, but steeper. The one is higher, but is not as steep. That's what they cross, right? That is the scenario. Any other scenario, it really doesn't cross. If the slope is the same, they're parallel, right? If the top one has a higher slope and the bottom one has a lower slope, it doesn't cross in the first quadrant, which means that there's nothing interesting, right? The top one is always more expensive. The bottom one is always cheaper, right? Okay. So the underlying idea, once again, is that one of the equations have lower y-intercept, but steeper. The one with a higher y-intercept, greater y-intercept, has a lower slope. That's why they intersect each other. Okay. In this particular case, let's go with B. I'm going to do the B right now, if you don't mind. All right, guys. So on the top, the one that is g of x, that is the darker one. F of x is the lighter one over here. So let's write the equation, guys. So g of x, right? What we have over there is 0, 1. But clearly that means y is equal to 1, right? The other point they gave us was the point at which they're the same, right? Which is 7, 15. And from that, we could find the slope, right? And then slope is change in y and change in x. Let's zoom that in a little bit. And that is, okay, right minus the left, 15 minus 1 over same minus 0. 14 over 7, that is equal to 2. So we know the slope is 2, y-intercept is 1. Therefore, we could say the g of x is 2x plus 1. Now let's look at the f of x. Let's write down all the information that we have. And 2 points that are given to us, they're telling us that we should use, is 0, 8, comma, once again, 7, 15. Once again, if x is equal to 0, whatever the y is, that's the b, right? So b is equal to 8. And the slope is change in y and change in x. Please be sure to write exactly like I do. And once you do enough of this whole process gets seared into your memory, which is what we want to see happen. Okay. And there we have 15 minus 8 divided by 7 minus 0, which is 7 divided by 7 is 1. So we see that f of x is equal to 1x plus 8. All right. There you go. So now we have to interpret this, right? So what we say is, therefore, right, 7, 15, 7 comma 15 represents the solution for system of equation for 2 equations, guys. The g of x is 2x, oopsie, plus 1, and the f of x is 1x plus 8. So that is a larger picture, right? All right. that should be it. And our job over here was to use the graph to create the linear models and then create the linear system and state the solution it represents. Yeah. And clearly the solution is the intersecting point. That's kind of obvious, right? But our job was to find the two linear equations. All right, guys. We have your turn. Why don't you guys pause the video and practice your turn? And this one maybe takes anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, I'm going to assume that you have finished, and here it is. The answer is 7,64. That's a solution. And then system equation is f of x equal to x plus 57, g of x equal to 7x plus 15. The solution of $64 represents that both capital will cost 7 days. Okay. In this particular case, they were saying that this represents the they wanted you to create the the scenario. Darn it. I forgot to tell you to do that. All right. My bad. So in this particular case, sorry, I was so busy teaching that I even forgot about what I'm teaching. So in this particular case, what you should have said was we need to add extra words here, right? So there'd be 7. That 7 represents the 7 pounds of mixed trail, right? And what do we have? And the cost will be the same, right? And then there are 2 different stores, I get brands, I guess, right? So what that means is that 7 pounds, right? 7 pounds of trail mix costs the same for, I'll say, both companies, both brands. How's that? Both brands. All right. Could you add that in too? Sorry about that. All right, guys. That sort of concludes today's lesson, and I shall talk to you in class. Okay.